Captain Lee Minho stood quietly in the great hall of the Galactic Assembly. His blue coalition uniform looked old and simple compared to the shining armor of the warrior races around him. He held a small datapad with trade numbers and shipping routes. To everyone watching, he was just another human merchant trying to make deals. Earth wishes to increase grain exports to the Outer Rim, Minho said in a calm voice. We also offer medical supplies and communication equipment. His words were boring on purpose. Humans had learned long ago that boring people were ignored, and ignored people could watch and listen without being noticed. Ambassador Park Jisoo sat in the human section, nodding politely as other species talked about important matters. She smiled when the tall Krillian warrior stood up and waved his forearms dismissively. Humans are good for buying and selling, the alien growled through his translator. But their tiny ships could not protect even one small moon from real fighters. Other aliens laughed. The snake-like Vorthons hissed their amusement. The crystal beings from Arcturus made tinkling sounds that meant they found something funny. Park Jisoo kept smiling, but she made a mental note. The Krillians had 3 major fleet bases, and their newest ships had weak spots near the engine core. She had learned this from a human tourist who visited their shipyards last month. What none of these aliens knew was simple, but terrifying. Every human in the galaxy was a spy. The friendly human doctor, treating sick aliens on Kepler Station, was recording their biology and weaknesses. The human engineer fixing alien computers was copying their military codes. The human teacher working with alien children was learning about their family structures and government secrets. For 200 years, humanity had been the galaxy's students, and they had been very good students. Director Kim Taeyong sat deep, underground on Earth, so far down that the rock above him was hot from the planet's core. Around him, thousands of screens showed information flowing in from across the galaxy. Ship movements, troop numbers, political arguments, economic problems, everything was recorded and studied. The room looked like a simple research center to anyone who might visit. The workers wore white coats and looked like scientists studying space weather. But every person in that room was actually a military intelligence officer, and the data they collected could destroy entire civilizations. Kim touched a control panel, and new images appeared. These showed the real human military. Ships bigger than space stations floated in the dark between stars, invisible to alien sensors. Asteroid bases that looked like rocks from outside but held millions of soldiers and weapons inside. Even the small human colonies had underground bunkers filled with enough firepower to fight off invasion fleets. The galaxy thought humans were weak because that was what humans wanted them to think. Every human ship that looked old and slow could actually outrun and outfight most alien vessels. Every human colony that seemed peaceful and helpless was actually a fortress that could hold off armies. The truth was hidden so well that even some humans forgot how dangerous their species really was. This great lie had protected humanity for 2 centuries. While other species fought wars and destroyed each other, humans traded and learned and grew stronger in secret. They copied the best weapons from every race. They studied every battle tactic. They mapped every weakness, and they waited. The waiting ended on a Tuesday. Kim's screens suddenly flashed red as emergency. Signals poured in from 3 human colonies. New Geneva, Harmony Station, and Port Elizabeth were all under attack at the same time. The attackers were ships from the Zephyrian Dominion, a cruel empire from outside Coalition space that conquered worlds for sport. The aliens had made their move. They saw human colonies as easy targets, places with valuable resources, but weak defenses. They planned to kill or capture all the humans, take whatever they wanted, and disappear back into deep space before anyone could stop them. New Geneva died first. The Zephyrians dropped nuclear weapons on the cities before anyone could evacuate. 3 million people turned to ash in seconds. Men, women, children, babies, all gone. The attack was filmed and broadcast to show other species what happened to those who could not defend themselves. Kim watched the footage with cold eyes. Around him, his officers waited for orders. The screens now showed something different. Not the gentle human traders and diplomats the galaxy knew, but the real human military stirring to life after centuries of sleep. In hidden bases across space, weapons that could crack planets powered up. Ships that could outrun light itself prepared for war. Soldiers who had trained their whole lives for this moment checked their equipment one final time. The Zephyrians thought they were hunting sheep. They had no idea. They had just poked a sleeping dragon. The mask was about to come off, and the galaxy would finally see what humanity really was underneath all the smiles and trade agreements. It would not be a pleasant sight. Lieutenant Colonel Choi Min-jae stared at the numbers on his screen and felt something cold settle in his chest. 3 million dead. The reports kept coming in from the destroyed colonies, each one worse than the last. Pictures of children's toys scattered in radioactive ruins. Schools turned to glass. Hospitals melted into metal puddles. He had been a soldier for 20 years, but he had never seen war like this. Real war. The kind where civilians died first and questions were asked later. His hands shook as he read the names: Kim Soo-jin, age 7, Park Min-woo, age 4, Lee Yuna, age 9 months old. Something very old and very angry woke up inside him. Something that humans had been trying to forget for 2 centuries. On Earth, President Song Hana walked slowly to the podium where the coalition delegates waited. Her face was calm, but everyone in the room could feel the change in the air. The temperature seemed to drop. The lights seemed dimmer. Even the alien translators worked more quietly. "My fellow beings," she began, her voice soft and pleasant like always. But there was something underneath it now, something that made the Krillian ambassador lean back in his chair. For 200 years, humanity has chosen the path of peace. We believed that civilization had grown beyond the need for violence. We thought that intelligent beings could solve problems with words instead of weapons. She paused and looked around the room. Every alien delegate was watching her carefully now. The Zephyrian Dominion has taught us that we were wrong. They have shown us that there are still monsters in the dark who kill children for pleasure. This ends today. Never again will human civilians die while their killers go unpunished. The words were simple, but they hit the room like a physical blow. The snake-like Vorthons coiled tighter around their seats. The crystal beings stopped their musical humming. Even the proud Krillians looked uncomfortable. Something had changed in the human representative, and every instinct these aliens had was telling them to run. The first sign of what was coming happened in the Kepler system, far from Earth. Captain Yoon Ji-hoon had been running cargo between planets for 15 years. His ship looked like any other human freighter, old, slow, and harmless. The alien port controllers barely glanced at it as it requested departure clearance. Cargo hauler, Earth 77, requesting permission to leave orbit, Ji-hoon said into his radio, using the same bored voice he had used thousands of times before. Permission granted. Human vessel. Safe travels. But as soon as his ship cleared the planet's atmosphere, something incredible happened. Panels along the hull slid open, revealing weapon systems that belonged on a battleship. The cargo containers detached, showing sleek armor underneath. Even the engines changed, glowing brighter as military-grade power cores came online. In 30 seconds, the slow cargo ship had become a heavy cruiser armed with weapons the Coalition had never seen before. This scene repeated itself across the galaxy. Thousands of human merchant ships shed their disguises at exactly the same time. Mining vessels revealed torpedo launchers. Passenger liners sprouted missile batteries. Even small pleasure craft opened up to show advanced fighter systems inside. The galaxy's intelligence services went crazy, trying to figure out what was happening. How had they missed this? How many human ships were actually warships in disguise? The answer was terrifying. Nearly all of them. Admiral Juan Dejo had been living quietly on a farm on Europa for 10 years. His neighbors knew him as a friendly old man who grew vegetables and fixed broken farm equipment. What they did not know was that he had commanded humanity's secret navy for 40 years before retiring. When the call came, he was feeding chickens behind his small house. He listened to the message, nodded once, and walked inside. 20 minutes later, a shuttle landed in his yard and took him away. The chickens never saw him again. His destination was a place that did not exist on any star chart. Hidden in a dark nebula between systems, humanity's real fleet had been waiting for decades. Ships the size of cities powered up their engines. Crews who had trained in secret their whole lives reported to battle stations. Weapons that could destroy planets charged their systems. The Shadow Fleet was no longer hiding. Dr. Lim Sahi worked at what everyone thought was a simple research station, studying cosmic radiation. She wore a white lab coat and spent her days looking at space through big telescopes. Visiting scientists thought she was studying star formation and solar winds. They were wrong. Her telescopes were actually the most advanced military sensors ever built. Her computers tracked every ship, movement within 50 light-years of Earth. Her research data was actually detailed intelligence on every alien military base, fleet position, and weapon system in known space. When she activated the full network, the truth became clear. Humanity's scientific stations throughout the galaxy were all connected. Together, they formed a monitoring system so advanced that humans knew where every alien ship was at all times. The hunters had become the hunted, and they did not even know it yet. The prey had become the predator, and the galaxy was about to learn what that meant. General Bei Jinyong looked at the holographic display, showing the Zephyrian homeworld. Every alien military expert in the galaxy called it impossible to attack. The planet had energy shields that could stop asteroid impacts, orbital defense platforms with weapons that could destroy entire fleets, underground bunkers that could survive nuclear war. The aliens had built their capital to last forever. They were about to learn that forever was not as long as they thought. 6 hours, Jinyong told his staff officers. That is how long this will take. His officers looked at each other nervously. The Zephyrians had been preparing their defenses for hundreds of years. How could anyone break through in 6 hours? They were about to find out. The attack began in a way that confused every military observer in the galaxy. Humans did not charge bravely at the enemy like Krillian warriors. They did not challenge the Zephyrians to honorable single combat like the proud Vorthans. They did not announce their intentions like civilized beings were supposed to do. Instead, they cheated. Commander Oh Sung-min sat in a small ship, far from the fighting, typing on a computer keyboard. He looked more like a clerk than a soldier, but what he was doing was more dangerous than any weapon. His fingers moved quickly across the keys, sending invisible attacks through space. Computer viruses flowed through Zephyrian networks like poison through water. Communication systems went dead. Radar screens went black. Even the lights went out in their military command centers. In 30 minutes, the most advanced civilization in their region could not tell their own ships where the enemy was. All their networks are down, Oh reported calmly. They are blind and deaf now. At the same time, Captain On-Mien's ships moved through space, like ghosts. Her vessels were invisible to sensors, coated with materials that bent light and absorbed radar signals. The Zephyrians had no idea death was approaching until it was too late. Her first target was a deep space monitoring station that watched for enemy fleets. The station's crew was drinking coffee and playing card games, confident that their powerful sensors would see attackers coming from light years away. They never saw the human torpedo that turned their station into expanding gas and metal fragments. This happened to every Zephyrian early warning post at the same time. In one coordinated strike, humanity blinded their enemy completely. The Zephyrians went from seeing everything in their territory to seeing nothing at all. Then the real attack began. Human ships appeared from hyperspace at exactly the same moment, surrounding the homeworld like a closing fist. But they did not attack the military targets first, like honorable warriors were supposed to do. Instead, they hit everything at once. Power plants exploded in balls of fire. Communication towers fell like cut trees. Factories that built ships and weapons vanished in nuclear flames. Government buildings where leaders made decisions turned to rubble in seconds. The coalition delegates, watching from their safe observation ships, were horrified. This was not how civilized beings fought wars. Where was the honor? Where were the rules? Where was the mercy for those who surrendered? "They fight like demons," whispered a tall Krillian observer, his forearms shaking as he watched the destruction. Ambassador Park Jisoo stood beside him, her face calm as ice. "No," she replied in a voice that could freeze blood. "We fight like humans. You have simply forgotten what that means." The truth was simple and terrible. For 2 centuries, the galaxy had lived in peace because they had forgotten what real war looked like. They fought according to ancient rules and codes of honor. They protected civilians and sacred places. They gave enemies chances to surrender. Humans remembered something the galaxy had chosen to forget. War was not a game. War was not about honor. War was about making the enemy stop fighting forever, by any means necessary. Fleet Admiral Seo Woojin commanded the assault from his flagship, watching as his carefully planned attack unfolded like clockwork. Every target had been chosen months ago. Every weapon had been positioned perfectly. Every timing had been calculated to cause maximum damage. The Zephyrian military tried to fight back, but they were fighting blind and confused. Their communication networks were dead, so commanders could not talk to their ships. Their radar was jammed, so they could not find targets to shoot at. Their computer systems were infected with viruses that made their own weapons turn against them. In 3 hours, the orbital defense platforms were destroyed. In 4 hours, the planetary shields failed. In 5 hours, the government surrendered unconditionally. In 6 hours, as General Bei Jinyang had promised, it was over. But the humans did not stop when the enemy gave up. They kept attacking until every military base was rubble, every weapons factory was ash, and every government building was a crater. They destroyed the Zephyrian ability to make war so completely that it would take centuries to rebuild. The galaxy's great warrior races watched this destruction and realized something that chilled them to their bones. They had been playing at war for so long that they had forgotten how to really fight. Compared to humanity's methodical, brutal efficiency, they were children with toy swords pretending to be soldiers. The humans had shown them what total war really meant, and it was more terrible than any nightmare. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Coalition happened faster than any meeting in history. Representatives from dozens of species arrived at the central station within hours, all talking at once, all demanding answers about what humanity had just done to the Zephyrians' war leader. Thakmur of the Krillian Empire slammed his 4 fists on the speaking platform, his red eyes blazing with anger. He was 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor plates that had stopped bullets in 100 battles. When he spoke, his voice shook the room. "What we have witnessed is not war," he roared. "It is slaughter. It is barbarism. The humans have destroyed an entire civilization in 6 hours. They showed no mercy, no honor, no respect for the rules of civilized combat. This madness must be stopped before they turn on us all." Around the room, other delegates nodded and made sounds of agreement. The crystal beings chimed in harmony. The snake-like Vorthans hissed their approval. Even the normally calm delegates from the peaceful worlds seemed frightened by what they had seen. But then the main screen activated, and President Song Hannah appeared from Earth. She looked exactly the same as always, a small, middle-aged woman, in a simple black suit. But something in her eyes had changed. something that made even the mighty Krillian war leader step back from the screen. "My fellow beings," she said in that same calm voice they all remembered, "I have listened to your concerns about humanity's actions against the Zephyrian Dominion. Allow me to respond with complete clarity." She paused, and the silence in the room was so complete that the air recycling systems sounded like thunder. For 200 years, humanity offered peace to this galaxy. We traded fairly, we mediated disputes, we helped build the coalition that has kept the peace for generations. We were ignored when we spoke of justice. We were dismissed when we asked for protection. We were laughed at when we requested respect. Her voice grew colder with each word. And finally, we were attacked. 3 million of our civilians were murdered in a single day. Children were burned alive for the entertainment of creatures who thought we were too weak to respond. Any species that considers our reaction excessive is welcome to test our resolve personally. The threat hung in the air like a physical presence. Every delegate in the room suddenly remembered that humanity had just destroyed the most heavily defended world in known space in 6 hours. But war leader Thakmer was not easily intimidated. He had fought in 50 battles and conquered 20 worlds. "You threaten us," he snarled. "We Krillians have never feared any enemy. If you wish war with the greatest military power in the galaxy, you shall have it." The response came not from President Song, but from a man who appeared on a smaller screen beside her. Intelligence Director Kim Namjoon looked like a university professor with his neat glasses and quiet manner. When he spoke, his voice was soft and pleasant. "War Leader Thakmer," he said politely, "may I share some information with you?" Without waiting for an answer, Kim activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. Detailed star maps appeared, showing the Krillian Empire in perfect detail. Every world, every base, every ship was marked and labeled. "Your third fleet is currently stationed at Kepler Base, correct?" Kim asked. "All 67 ships, including your new flagship that you think is secret. The one with the experimental weapons that violate 3 coalition treaties." Thakmer's eyes widened. That information was classified at the highest levels. Kim smiled pleasantly and continued. "Your home defense grid has a weakness in the 7th sector where your engineers cut costs on shield generators. Your government is dealing with rebellion on 4 colony worlds. Your war leader's own brother is planning to challenge him for leadership next month." The hologram changed, showing detailed files on every species in the room. Military plans, government secrets, economic problems, political scandals. Everything was there, organized and ready. "You want to stop us?" Kim asked the assembled delegates, still smiling that gentle smile. "Please, try. We know which of your colonies are undefended. We know which of your leaders take bribes. We know exactly how to bring each of your civilizations to its knees without firing a single shot." The room fell completely silent. Every delegate was staring at the information about their own species, realizing that humanity knew things that should have been impossible to discover. "How?" whispered the Vorthan ambassador. "How do you know all this?" "Simple," Kim replied. "We have been watching and learning for 2 centuries. Every human trader who visited your worlds was also an intelligence agent. Every human diplomat who attended your meetings was recording everything said. Every human tourist who admired your military parades was counting your weapons and noting your weaknesses." As if to prove his point, fleet movements appeared on screens throughout the station. Human ships were approaching every major coalition world, not attacking but making their presence known. Captain Lee Heron's fleet surrounded the Vorthon capital. Similar fleets appeared near Krillian homeworlds, Arcturian crystal gardens, and the peaceful worlds of the Outer Rim. The message was clear without being spoken. Humanity was no longer hiding. They were no longer pretending to be weak, and they were no longer asking for permission. War Leader Thakmer looked at the display showing human ships near his homeworld and slowly sat down. For the first time in his long military career, he was truly afraid. The galaxy had spent 2 centuries believing humans were harmless neighbors. Now they realized the truth. Humanity had been studying them like insects under a microscope, learning everything, preparing for this moment. The prey had always been the predator. They had just been very patient hunters. For months after the first attack, the Zephyrian Dominion was gone. Not defeated, not conquered, completely erased. Admiral Juan Dejo stood on the bridge of his massive flagship, looking down at what used to be the Zephyrian capital world. The cities were empty ruins now. The orbital stations floated dead in space. Even the name Zephyrian Dominion had been removed from star charts. Total victory, he reported to Earth through his communication system. His voice was calm, like he was discussing the weather. Mission complete. They will never threaten anyone again. On the planet below, human soldiers patrolled streets where no aliens walked anymore. The Zephyrian government buildings had been turned into human administrative centers. Their factories now built human equipment. Their schools taught human history to the few Zephyrian children who remained. The message was clear to everyone watching. This was not temporary occupation. This was permanent replacement. News of the complete destruction spread across the galaxy, faster than light-speed communication. Every species that had ever dismissed humanity as weak and harmless suddenly found themselves looking at their neighbors with new eyes. If humans could erase an entire civilization in 4 months, what could they do to anyone else who crossed them? The fear was so thick you could almost touch it. Ambassador Park Jisoo appeared before the coalition one last time, but everything was different now. The same delegates who used to barely pay attention when humans spoke now listened to every word with careful attention. The Krillian, who had once laughed at human weakness, sat quietly in his chair and avoided eye contact. "Humanity seeks peace," Park said, using the same gentle voice she had always used. "We have always sought peace. This has not changed." She paused and looked around the room, making sure every delegate was paying attention. "But we will no longer pretend to be harmless. Any species that chooses to target our civilians will join the Zephyrians in extinction." The word extinction hung in the air like a death sentence. Every alien in the room understood that this was not a threat or a warning. It was simply a statement of fact, delivered as calmly as announcing the time of day. President Song Hana made the new rules clear in a broadcast that reached every world in known space. She spoke from her office on Earth, sitting behind the same simple desk she had used for years. But the words she spoke changed the galaxy forever. "Never again will human children die because someone mistook our kindness for weakness," she said. "For 2 centuries, we chose to be gentle because we believed in civilization and peace. That choice is still available to us. But the galaxy has now seen our true face. We pray you never force us to show it again." The broadcast ended, but its effects lasted forever. Trade agreements were renewed immediately. Diplomatic relations improved overnight. Species that had never cared about human opinions suddenly sought human approval for their actions. Fear was a powerful motivator. Captain Choi Min-jae, who had watched those first casualty reports 4 months ago, decided he was tired of war. He resigned from the military and became a teacher in a small school on Mars. His students were young humans who had been born after the war began. But the history lessons he taught were different from what their parents had learned. The old textbooks talked about humanity's gentle nature and peaceful intentions. Choi's lessons were more honest. Our strength was never kindness. He told his class of our strength was choosing to be kind, even though we had the power to destroy our enemies. That choice made us civilized. But choices can be changed. His students learned about human history that had been hidden for generations. They studied the wars their species had fought on Earth before reaching the stars. They learned about concepts like total war and strategic destruction that other species had forgotten. Most importantly, they learned that humanity had always been dangerous. They had simply chosen not to show it. The phrase never again appeared everywhere humans lived or worked. It was carved into the walls of military bases and printed on diplomatic documents. Human colonies put up signs at their spaceports with those two words in dozens of alien languages. Even human merchant ships painted the phrase on their hulls. It was a promise to their own people and a warning to everyone else. The galaxy's balance of power had shifted completely. Species that had ruled through strength for thousands of years suddenly found themselves looking over their shoulders, wondering if the quiet humans in their territories were really as peaceful as they seemed. Trade continued. Diplomatic meetings were held. Life went on much as it always had. But everything was different now. When aliens met humans at space stations or trade centers, they saw something new in human eyes. A shadow behind the friendly smiles and polite words. A reminder that beneath the civilization and culture and gentle manners, something very dangerous was always watching and waiting. The galaxy had spent 2 centuries believing that humans were harmless neighbors who sold grain and fixed broken machines. Now they understood the truth that changed everything. Humans were not the galaxy's helpful friends. They were apex predators who had simply been playing house for 200 years. And they could stop playing any time they chose. The mask was off forever, and everyone knew it.